Every exhausted man believes the same lie. She's the problem. He convinces himself that women are puzzles, that relationships require constant decoding, that love demands endless labor. But here's what nobody tells him. The weight crushing his chest isn't coming from her. It's coming from his own leaning. Watch any man drowning in relationship anxiety. He's perpetually tilted forward. Every text he sends carries invisible expectations. Every conversation holds hidden tests he's administering to himself. Every moment of silence becomes a courtroom where he stands trial for crimes he can't name. He's running a marathon nobody asked him to run. Explaining when silence would serve him better. Adjusting when stillness would speak louder. Reacting when observation would reveal more. He wonders why his legs burn and his lungs ache. He blames her for the exhaustion he created. The brutal irony cuts deep. His effort isn't building connection. It's suffocating it. Every desperate attempt to secure her interest pushes her further away. Every anxious message seeking reassurance drains the attraction he's trying to protect. He works harder and gets less. He gives more and receives nothing. When a man operates from this leaning position, everything becomes amplified. A 2-hour gap between messages transforms into evidence of abandonment. A shift in her tone becomes proof of fading interest. A canceled plan morphs into the beginning of the end. His mind spins stories that don't exist. His heart breaks over interpretations he invented. His nervous system stays perpetually activated. His mind never rests. He's always calculating, always preparing, always bracing for emotional impact. He treats love like a bomb that might explode if he stops paying attention for even a moment. From this state of constant vigilance, even the simplest relationship feels like navigating a minefield blindfolded. He can't enjoy what's in front of him because he's too busy protecting it from threats that haven't arrived. He sacrifices the present moment on the altar of future anxiety. But something remarkable happens the moment he stops. Not stops caring. Stops leaning. The instant he plants his feet on solid ground and refuses to chase stability outside himself, the entire landscape transforms. What felt impossible suddenly feels effortless. What seemed complicated suddenly becomes clear. This isn't about learning a technique. Techniques can be detected. This isn't about playing games. Games eventually get exposed. This is about understanding a truth that will reorganize everything you believe about attraction, connection, and what women actually respond to. That truth has a name. And until you embody it completely, relationships will continue feeling like battles you never signed up to fight. You'll keep bleeding in wars that exist only in your mind. You'll keep losing women who were never actually leaving. The exhaustion you feel isn't the price of love. It's the cost of misunderstanding it entirely. The word sounds like emptiness. Feels like freedom. Nonchalance. Most men hear it wrong. They picture emotional vacancy. Strategic coldness. Manufactured distance. They imagine becoming someone who doesn't care. Someone who withholds affection like a weapon. Someone who plays games with hearts like a board dealer shuffles cards. They couldn't be more mistaken. True nonchalance isn't the absence of feeling. It's the presence of something deeper. An unshakable knowing that your wholeness doesn't depend on her response. A quiet understanding that you'll navigate whatever comes. Not with indifference. With groundedness. Picture two men receiving the same ambiguous message from a woman they're interested in. One man's stomach drops immediately. His mind races through interpretations. He drafts 17 responses and deletes them all. He checks if she's online. He wonders what he did wrong. He feels his confidence evaporating with each passing minute. The other man reads the same message. He notices his initial reaction. Then he settles back into himself. He responds when it feels natural. His day continues uninterrupted. Not because he doesn't care about her. Because his inner peace isn't hostage to her punctuation choices. That's the difference most men never grasp. One man's entire emotional state depends on external validation. The other man's emotional state depends on nothing but himself. Same situation. Completely different experiences. One suffers. One stays steady. This quality isn't armor you put on. It's not a performance you rehearse. It's simply a man who has made peace with uncertainty because he's made peace with himself. He doesn't need the world to cooperate for him to feel okay. He doesn't need her approval to know his value. Women detect this before they can describe it. They feel its presence like warmth from a fire across the room. It shows up in how he speaks. Unhurried, unforced. It appears in how he listens, without mentally preparing his defense. It reveals itself in how he moves through ambiguity, without urgency to resolve what isn't his to solve. This isn't confidence that needs to announce itself. Loud confidence often masks deep insecurity. This isn't dominance that demands submission. That kind of control comes from fear. This is simply a man at rest within his own skin, extending an invitation rather than making a demand, offering presence rather than seeking validation. He doesn't need her to complete him because nothing is missing. He doesn't need her to validate him because he already knows who he is. He doesn't need her to stay because he's already comfortable alone. And paradoxically, this freedom is exactly what makes her want to stay. When a man stops needing a specific outcome, he becomes magnetic. When he releases his grip on how things should unfold, attraction finally has room to breathe. The desperate grasp repels. The open hand attracts. This distinction changes everything about how connection actually functions between two people. Before peace there was a prison made of interpretation. The man without internal grounding lives inside a mental courtroom that never adjourns. Every interaction becomes evidence. Every behavior becomes testimony. Every silence becomes an accusation he must answer. His thoughts spin in exhausting loops. He dissects text messages like a forensic analyst searching for hidden DNA. He reads tone into typography. He finds rejection in response times. He builds entire narratives from the spacing between her words. His mind becomes a conspiracy theorist working overtime against his own happiness. He replays conversations from 3 days ago wondering if his joke landed wrong. He analyzes her word choice looking for hidden meanings that don't exist. He compares her response time today to her response time last week. He notices she used a period instead of an exclamation point and spirals for hours. His mind works overtime trying desperately to stay 3 steps ahead of her emotional weather. If he can just predict the storm, he tells himself he can prevent it. If he can just decode her patterns, he can maintain her interest. If he can just stay vigilant enough, he won't be caught off guard by heartbreak. But vigilance isn't connection. Prediction isn't intimacy. All this mental labor achieves is exhaustion dressed as effort. He's working the hardest job in the world for no pay. He's solving puzzles she never created. He's answering questions she never asked. Women experience this man as unstable even when his surface behavior looks caring. They sense the earthquake beneath his calm words. They feel the questions he's not asking but desperately wants answered. They notice how his mood rises and falls with theirs. He becomes a kite and she becomes the wind unwillingly. This dependency doesn't flatter them. It burdens them. No woman wants to become responsible for a man's emotional regulation. No woman wants her every word weighed for hidden meaning. No woman wants to feel that someone's entire sense of self trembles based on how warmly she texted good morning. The tragedy is that this man genuinely believes he's doing the right thing. He thinks attentiveness equals value. He thinks anticipating her needs proves his worthiness. He thinks his constant vigilance demonstrates how much he cares. He sacrifices his sanity believing it's romantic. But care delivered through anxiety doesn't feel like love. Feels like pressure. And pressure over time suffocates everything it touches. She starts feeling watched instead of appreciated. She starts feeling monitored instead of desired. She starts feeling responsible instead of cherished. The more he analyzes, the less he understands. The more he predicts, the more he gets wrong. The more he grips, the more she slips away. His prison has no bars, but he cannot escape. The walls are made of his own thoughts. The lock is his own fear. The sentence is loneliness disguised as love. She doesn't fall for effort. She falls for the type of effort. Here's what men consistently get wrong. They believe that more energy equals more attraction. More messages. More planning. More availability. More accommodation. Surely all this investment must generate proportional returns. It doesn't work that way. Attraction isn't mathematics. You cannot calculate your way into her heart. You cannot earn desire through accumulated deposits of attention. The ledger you're keeping in your head means nothing to her emotional system. Women don't respond to effort attached to anxiety. They respond to effort that flows from abundance. They can feel the difference between a man who reaches out because he chooses to and a man who reaches out because he can't tolerate the silence. One feels like a gift freely given. The other feels like a demand wearing the costume of generosity. When a man operates from nonchalance, his presence carries different weight. His attention feels selective because it is selective. His interest feels valuable because it isn't given from desperation. He doesn't flood her with proof of his worthiness. He simply shows up, full, unhurried, undemanding. The woman in this scenario feels something unusual. Space to miss him. Space to wonder about him. Space to notice her own feelings rather than constantly responding to his. Space to lean forward because he's not occupying all the emotional room. This is the paradox that drives anxious men crazy. The less he grasps, the more she reaches. The less he demands reassurance, the more freely she offers it. The less he tries to lock down certainty, the more she becomes certain on her own. Everything he chased runs away. Everything he released comes back. He still initiates contact. He still plans meaningful experiences. He still expresses genuine interest. But nothing he does carries the hidden invoice of expectation. He enjoys her warm responses without needing them to survive. He notices her distance without crumbling into despair. He participates fully without becoming dependent on specific outcomes. That participation without dependency is the rarest thing she'll encounter. Most men need her validation to feel good about themselves. Most men use her responses as a measuring stick for their worth. Most men hand her their emotional stability and ask her to carry it. His self-contained presence feels like relief. Like a vacation from being someone's emotional weather system. Like finally exhaling after holding breath she didn't know she was holding. She doesn't have to manage him. She doesn't have to reassure him. She doesn't have to perform happiness to prevent his collapse. For the first time she can just exist alongside someone without carrying invisible weight. She can have a bad day without worrying about his reaction. She can be uncertain without triggering his insecurity. She can breathe without feeling watched. And in that freedom something unexpected happens. She starts choosing him. Not from obligation. From genuine desire. She will pull back. Not always on purpose. Always as a test. Relationships don't move in straight lines. Interest rises and falls like tides. Energy shifts without announcement. Attention wanders and returns without explanation. These fluctuations are inevitable. They're not evidence of failure. They're the natural rhythm of human connection. Women often create these waves unconsciously. A slight withdrawal. A delayed response. A change in temperature. These movements aren't manipulations. They're instincts. Her system is gathering information. Who is this man when things feel uncertain? What does he do when I step back? Does his stability depend on my consistency? She doesn't plan these tests. Her body runs them automatically. Evolution programmed her to find steady men. She needs to know if he'll crumble at the first sign of ambiguity. She needs to feel whether his foundation is real or performance. The test reveals everything words could never tell her. The man without nonchalance fails these moments spectacularly. The instant he senses distance, panic floods his nervous system. His instinct screams at him to close the gap immediately. To pursue harder. To fix whatever broke. So he doubles his effort. He explains where no explanation was requested. He seeks reassurance through questions that reveal his deepest fear. Every action he takes from this panic state pushes her further away. Not because she wanted distance. Because his reaction confirmed what her instinct was testing. He needs her response to stay balanced. His stability is her responsibility. She felt the weight of that truth and stepped back further. The man anchored in nonchalance experiences the same fluctuation differently. He notices the shift clearly. He doesn't pretend it isn't happening. But he doesn't react emotionally either. He adjusts his engagement calmly. He mirrors the energy he's receiving rather than fighting against it. This response communicates something profound without a single word spoken. This man doesn't unravel when things feel uncertain. His inner peace isn't conditional on my behavior. I'm not responsible for keeping him together. He carries his own weight without asking me to help. That realization creates safety of a kind women rarely experience. Most men fall apart during uncertainty. Most men demand immediate resolution. Most men make their anxiety her emergency. He does none of these things. He simply remains himself. In that safety, her instinct to test dissolves completely. What was she testing for? Whether he'd remain steady. Yes. The question is answered. The experiment is complete. She found what she was looking for. This is when respect crystallizes. Not the respect she speaks about openly. The respect she feels deep in her system. The kind that changes how she sees him forever. The kind that influences how she treats him moving forward. The kind that makes her lean closer instead of pulling away. She tested him with distance. He responded with stillness. Now she knows exactly who he is. Nonchalance isn't just attractive. It's a filter and a shield. Beyond attraction, this quality serves a function men rarely consider. Protection. It guards against overinvestment before reciprocity is established. It prevents attachment to those who haven't earned emotional access. It creates clear sight when fantasy wants to blur reality. The man who lacks internal grounding invests based on potential. He sees who she could be. What this could become. How perfect things might unfold. He extends his heart before his mind has enough data. He grants emotional access as if trust were a gift to give rather than a bridge to build. He falls in love with possibilities instead of realities. He commits to projections instead of people. He gives his whole self to someone who only showed him fragments. Then he wonders why he keeps getting hurt. He blames bad luck. He blames women. He never blames his own rushing. Nonchalance slows this process naturally. Not through cynicism. Through clarity. The man who embodies it allows connection to prove itself before fully committing his resources. He observes behavior over time. He notices patterns without ignoring them. He doesn't rationalize inconsistency because he's not desperate for the story to work. Red flags remain red when you're not painting them green with hope. Warning signs stay visible when you're not blinding yourself with loneliness. Reality stays clear when you're not fogging it with fantasy. Nonchalance keeps your vision sharp. This patient observation filters out dynamics that would have drained him completely. Women who thrive on emotional chaos gradually lose interest. He doesn't provide the volatility they need. Women who want validation without investment drift away. His attention isn't infinitely available for their entertainment. And what remains? Those who match his groundedness. Those who respect his standards without being told. Those who value presence over performance. Those who offer mutual effort instead of one-sided pursuit. Quality rises when you stop accepting everything. There's something else women sense immediately. A man unafraid to walk away. Not threatening it with words. Simply embodying it with energy. His comfort with solitude speaks loudly. His relationship with himself shows clearly. His full life beyond her demonstrates abundance. These qualities communicate that he chooses her from desire, not desperation. From want, not need. From preference, not scarcity. That silent willingness to lose rather than compromise himself changes everything. It shifts how seriously she treats the connection. This isn't manipulation. This isn't games. This is simply a man who knows his worth. A man who won't negotiate his value for company. A man who would rather be alone and whole than together and diminished. Women recognize this energy instantly. They know when a man has options. They know when walking away is real. They know when they've found someone who doesn't need saving. And knowing all this makes them want to stay. The biggest change isn't in her. It's in him. When nonchalance becomes natural rather than performed, something profound reorganizes within a man. His nervous system recalibrates completely. The constant background hum of romantic anxiety slowly fades into silence. He's no longer interpreting every signal for hidden danger. His phone lights up and his body doesn't lurch. Silence extends and his mind doesn't spiral into dark conclusions. Uncertainty appears and his foundation doesn't crack beneath him. These shifts happen gradually. almost imperceptibly, until one day he realizes something remarkable. He's not managing his reactions anymore. He simply doesn't have the reactions that once tormented him. The monster that lived in his chest has quietly starved to death. The voice that narrated worst-case scenarios has gone mute. The anxiety that colored every interaction has faded to nothing. This internal quiet is more valuable than any relationship outcome. It's the end of exhaustion, the end of mental noise, the end of living in reaction to someone else's emotional weather. He finally owns his inner world completely. In this stillness, parts of himself begin returning. Hobbies that disappeared during anxious pursuit reappear naturally. Focus that scattered when validation became paramount sharpens again. Goals that faded when romance consumed all bandwidth become visible once more. He remembers who he was before he started losing himself. His standards rise without effort because he's no longer bargaining from scarcity. He no longer accepts treatment that diminishes him. He no longer rationalizes behavior that disrespects his worth. He no longer negotiates for minimum effort when he knows he deserves genuine investment. Women experience this man as mysteriously attractive without understanding why. It's not his appearance drawing them in. Not his achievements impressing them. Not even his charm winning them over. It's something far subtler than all of these. An absence of need radiates from him. A presence of self grounds every interaction. A fullness that doesn't require filling makes her feel free. He's not looking at her to complete his puzzle. He's already complete. They describe him later with words they can't quite explain. Grounded. Solid. Calm. Safe. Not safe because he was predictable or boring. Safe because he was consistent with himself regardless of what she offered or withheld. He didn't change personalities to win her approval. He didn't mirror her emotions to keep connection alive. He didn't sacrifice his truth for temporary harmony. He remained exactly who he was through every moment. That self-consistency becomes something they measure others against. Often without realizing they're doing it. Because once you've experienced someone who doesn't need you to be complete, everything else feels heavy. Everyone else feels like work. The man he's become isn't trying to attract anyone. He's simply existing in his fullness. And that existence alone draws people toward him like gravity pulls objects toward Earth. Effortlessly. Inevitably. Naturally. Long-term love doesn't survive on passion alone. It survives on internal steadiness. Most men believe that commitment requires emotional surrender. That closeness means merging completely. That lasting love demands sacrificing the self for the relationship. These beliefs slowly poison what they hope to protect. Watch a man without nonchalance in a relationship that extends past infatuation. He gradually bends more than he stands. Explains more than he pauses. Accommodates more than he observes. His emotional center shifts outward until he's living entirely in reaction mode. Her moods become his moods. Her happiness becomes his mission. Her dissatisfaction becomes his emergency. He loses himself one compromise at a time. Each individual accommodation seems minor. Each explanation seems reasonable. Each adjustment seems like love expressing itself properly. But compound enough small concessions and something terrible happens. A man wakes up one day having forgotten who he was before her. He looks in the mirror and sees a stranger. He searches for his opinions and finds only hers. He reaches for his desires and grasps empty air. Nonchalance prevents this gradual dissolution. Not by creating distance. By maintaining proportion. The man anchored in himself can give generously without depleting his reserves. Can be present without disappearing entirely. Can care deeply without making her the sole source of his peace. This is where commitment acquires real depth. It stops being reactive. Desperate grasping at stability disguised as devotion. It becomes chosen. Clear-eyed recognition of genuine alignment. He doesn't commit to relieve anxiety. He doesn't commit to prevent loss. He commits because patience and observation revealed something worth building. Women feel this distinction immediately. Commitment fueled by fear feels heavy. Almost suffocating. Commitment emerging from clarity feels grounding. Stabilizing. One creates obligation that breeds resentment. The other creates partnership that breeds growth. Conflict changes texture entirely in this dynamic. Instead of escalating, things slow down. Instead of defending, there's listening. Instead of winning, there's understanding. He doesn't engage emotionally in chaos because he isn't destabilized by it. His calm during her storms becomes the steady reference point. Eventually that steadiness calms the waters themselves. She borrows his peace when hers runs out. She anchors to his stability when hers wavers. Two people regulating together instead of dysregulating each other. Stability over time becomes more attractive than any excitement could be. Not because excitement disappears from their lives. Because it finally has a foundation to rest upon. Passion without stability burns everything down. Stability without passion slowly dies. Together they create something that lasts. The man who maintains himself while loving deeply has discovered the secret. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot give what you don't possess. You cannot lead her to peace if you've never found your own. He keeps himself full. And from that fullness genuine love finally becomes possible. Women were never the problem. Emotional imbalance was. This is the uncomfortable realization awaiting every man who finally embodies what this entire journey teaches. Women aren't complicated creatures designed to confuse. Life isn't cruel punishment meant to frustrate. Relationships aren't impossible puzzles created to defeat him. Most men operate without internal grounding in a world that punishes emotional instability. They navigate complex dynamics while standing on shaking ground. Every step feels treacherous because their foundation trembles. They blame the path when the problem is their footing. When a woman feels pressure from being someone's emotional center, something shifts. The weight of managing another person's sense of worth becomes unbearable. She carries responsibility she never agreed to accept. When that pressure finally disappears, so does her resistance. Not because she changed. Because the environment changed completely. He stopped making her responsible for his peace. He stopped outsourcing his stability to her responses. He stopped treating her like medicine for a sickness only he could cure. And suddenly everything between them transformed. The men who integrate this understanding don't become cold. They become selective. They don't avoid connection out of fear. They approach it carefully with open eyes. They don't hate intimacy or run from vulnerability. They protect its value by refusing to cheapen it with desperation. When they commit, it emerges from recognition rather than urgency. When they walk away, it's clean rather than dramatic. When rejection arrives, it doesn't collapse them into ruins. They never made another person the foundation of their worth. So nothing crumbles when someone leaves. These men age better in relationships than others. While some grow resentful over accumulated disappointments, they remain steady. While others become drained from constant emotional labor, they stay full. While many turn emotionally brittle from repeated wounds, they maintain flexibility. He doesn't accumulate unspoken frustrations waiting to explode. He doesn't suppress himself for false harmony that breeds contempt. He doesn't sacrifice internal balance for temporary external peace. He addresses what needs addressing. He releases what needs releasing. Something unexpected happens in memory. A woman doesn't remember the man who tried hardest to impress her. She remembers the one who felt solid beneath surface charm. The one who didn't rush toward commitment out of fear. The one who didn't chase reassurance or crumble during uncertainty. His presence lingers long after physical presence ends. Not because he tried to be unforgettable. Because he never needed to be remembered. That freedom from need made him impossible to forget. Care without clinging. Engage without chasing. Stand without hardening. Allow without attaching. From this place, connection stops being something you struggle to maintain. It becomes something that unfolds naturally without force. The exhaustion ends. The confusion clears. The battles cease. Not because people change around you. Because you've finally changed within yourself. The exhaustion ends here. The confusion clears today. The battles cease now. Not because people change around you. Because you've finally changed within yourself. And this transformation is only beginning. What you learn today is one piece of a much larger puzzle. Every video on this channel hands you another piece. Another insight. Another shift that brings you closer to becoming unshakable. The man you're becoming deserves more than random content. He deserves a complete roadmap. That's exactly what you'll find here waiting for you. Subscribe right now. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. The next video might be the one that rewires everything permanently. Leave a comment below with your biggest realization from today. Tell me which moment hit hardest. Your words help other men find this message when they need it most. Share this video with one person who's struggling in silence. One friend stuck in the exhausting cycle. You know exactly who came to mind just now. Send it to him today. Your support helps this message spread further. Your engagement tells the algorithm this content matters. Together we build a community of grounded men who refuse to lose themselves. You didn't find this video by accident. Something inside you was ready for change. Honor that instinct. Subscribe now. I'll see you in the next one.